The Grand Council chambers of the United Galactic Federation stretched upward into darkness, its ancient stone walls adorned with glowing crystals that cast dancing shadows across the assembled diplomats. The room held representatives from over 300 species, each more exotic than the last. Some floated in containment fields filled with various gases, others towered on crystalline limbs, while a few existed as pure energy contained within specialized suits. Today was different. Today, they would meet their first human diplomat. The massive doors swung open with a deep resonating boom that echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Jai-Ho Park walked in with the casual confidence of someone entering their favorite coffee shop. His crisp black suit stood in stark contrast to the flowing robes and biomechanical outfits worn by the other species. Whispers and the electronic hum of universal translators filled the air as Jai-Ho approached the central podium. Several species activated their protective shields, a standard procedure when meeting new races. A few even extended their sensory organs to better observe this strange bipedal creature. High Counselor Tuck, whose crystalline body sparkled with internal light, leaned forward on his hovering platform. His voice resonated through the chamber like chimes in the wind. Ambassador Park, we welcome Earth to these chambers. However, we must address certain concerns that have arisen during our preliminary observations of your species. Jai-Ho smiled warmly, his eyes scanning the room with genuine interest. Of course, High Counselor, we humans are an open book. Your species has an unusual approach to safety protocols. Tak continued, his crystal form shifting colors from blue to a concerned purple. Our observers have reported humans engaging in recreational activities that most species consider near-fatal experiences. You willingly consume substances that would kill most sentient beings. You expose yourselves to extreme temperatures for pleasure. As Tak spoke, Jai-Ho's attention had wandered to the ceremonial table beside the podium. Among the various artifacts lay a simple crystal cup filled with a swirling purple liquid. Ancient marking on the cup clearly displayed the universal symbol for lethal toxins. Ah, is this the verification fluid? Jai-Ho asked, reaching for the cup. I read about this in the briefing materials. Used to prove the authenticity of diplomatic intentions, right? Several delegates gasped. A small jellyfish-like being near the front actually fainted, its bioluminescence flickering out completely. Ambassador Park, please do not. Tak began, but it was too late. Jai-Ho had already grabbed the cup, and with the casual motion of someone taking their morning vitamins, downed the entire contents in one gulp. He smacked his lips thoughtfully as the council erupted into chaos. Some delegates fled the chamber, others activated emergency containment fields, and a medical team rushed forward with various antidote dispensers hovering around them. Delicious, Jai-Ho declared brightly, setting the empty cup down. Reminds me of my grandmother's kimchi, though it could use a bit more spice. She always said food should make you cry at least a little. The medical team reached him, their scanners whirring frantically. The head physician, a being composed entirely of shifting geometric shapes, stared at the readings in disbelief. Impossible, the physician announced. His vital signs are normal, better than normal. The toxin appears to be metabolizing into beneficial nutrients. Jai-Ho straightened his tie, seemingly unaware of the commotion he caused. Oh, that. Yes, our scientists mentioned humans might have unique reactions to certain compounds. Something about our evolutionary history with fermented foods and survival adaptations. I hope I haven't violated any protocols. High Counselor Tak's crystalline form had shifted to a shade of green that indicated deep amazement. Ambassador Park, that fluid has ended the lives of 17 different would-be assassins over the millennia. It is not a test. It is a security measure. Oh, Jai-Ho said, looking slightly embarrassed. Well, in that case, maybe we should discuss updating your security protocols. I know several excellent human beverages that would work much better. Have you ever heard of something called ghost pepper sauce? The council chamber remained in stunned silence as the implication sank in. Humanity hadn't just joined the galactic community. They had unknowingly demonstrated that everything the Council knew about biological limitations needed to be reconsidered. Jai-Ho pulled out a small flask from his jacket pocket. "Now, who'd like to try some traditional Korean soju? I promise it's much tastier than that verification fluid." The medical team's scanners started beeping frantically again, and the day's proceedings had to be temporarily suspended due to mass panic among the delegates. It was, as humans would say, quite an entrance. Chief Engineer Harin stood at the observation deck of Starbase 47, her hands pressed against the reinforced glass as she studied the massive quantum drive floating in the construction dock. The drive's core pulsed with a soft blue light, its experimental design marking it as the most advanced piece of technology in this sector of space. Behind her, a group of alien engineers chittered nervously among themselves. Their protective suits whirred and clicked as they gestured at the holographic safety projections floating between them. "Impossible," declared Chief Safety Officer Mrick, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "The radiation levels alone make this a 20-cycle project minimum. The quantum fluctuations would tear apart any working crew in seconds." Harin turned from the window, a slight smile playing on her lips. Her engineering crew was already suiting up in the airlock chamber, led by her assistant Sungmin, who was whistling an old K-pop tune as he checked his equipment. 20 cycles, Harin asked, checking her datapad. "We'll have it done in 3 days." The alien engineer's translation devices must have malfunctioned, because they asked her to repeat herself 4 times. When they finally understood she was serious, their color-changing skin shifted through various shades of alarm. But the warning labels. Mrick waved his upper limbs at the construction site. "Every surface is covered in death warnings. The approach zone alone has 15 different types of lethal radiation." Sungmin walked up, already in his suit except for the helmet. "Chief, the team's ready. We've cleared most of the warning signs and safety barriers. You wouldn't believe how much space they were wasting." The aliens watched in horror as the human engineering team began dismantling the extensive safety systems that had taken months to install. Warning labels floated away into space. Radiation shields were carefully stacked to one side. Automated safety drones were politely but firmly deactivated. "Those warning labels are more like suggestions," Sungmin said, casually tossing aside a particularly large sign that read "Absolute Death Zone. No APROHH under NISRQM stances." He squinted at the quantum drive. "Besides, how are we supposed to reach the good handholds with all that clutter in the way?" The Alien Oversight Committee had to be escorted to their medical bay when they saw the humans beginning their work. Harin's team moved through the supposedly lethal radiation zones with the casual confidence of people taking a sunny walk in the park. They worked in shifts, though not for safety reasons. "We just get hungry," Harin explained to the bewildered aliens. The humans had somehow turned the most dangerous engineering project in the quadrant into something resembling a casual workspace. They even set up a small break area inside what was clearly marked as a total molecular disruption zone. On the second day, Sungmin discovered that the quantum radiation made his coffee stay hot indefinitely, which he considered a nice bonus. The alien engineers watched through their sensors as the humans treated lethal danger zones like convenient kitchen appliances. By the 3rd day, Harin's team had not only installed the quantum drive, but had also improved its efficiency by 40%. When asked how they managed this, Sungmin shrugged and said, "Well, once you remove all those safety interlocks, you can really see how the thing works." The final inspection team arrived to find the project completed, the quantum drive humming peacefully in its housing, and the human engineering crew celebrating with what they called a space barbecue in an area previously designated as unsurvivable under any circumstances. Harin submitted her final report, a document so brief it shocked the alien bureaucrats. Under safety considerations, she had written only, "Removed unnecessary obstacles. Applied human common sense. Project completed ahead of schedule." The Alien Oversight Committee, once they were revived from their stress-induced comas, demanded an explanation for this unprecedented violation of every known safety protocol in the galaxy. Harin looked up from her celebratory cup of instant ramen, which she was heating directly in the quantum drive's radiation field. "The labels were blocking the good handholds," she said simply. "Besides, how dangerous can it be if we finished it in 3 days?" That evening, as the humans celebrated and the aliens updated their species threat assessment protocols, Sungmin posted a sign of his own on the completed quantum drive. It read, "Warning. Safety labels may be hazardous to project completion times." The incident would later be cited in the Galactic Council's revised engineering guidelines, which included a new category: human-approved shortcuts. Use at your own risk. It was the first time in galactic history that official safety protocols included a section marked optional. The massive viewing screens aboard the Galactic Sports Network's main station displayed a sight that made most species question their visual processors. In the distance, the Nexus Gap twisted reality itself, a tear in spacetime that pulsed with colors that shouldn't exist. Swirls of quantum uncertainty created patterns that drove most observers mad if they looked too long. Today on Galactic Sports Network, the announcer's voice trembled noticeably, his translator struggling to maintain composure. "We witness human champion Do-Yun Kim attempt what many consider not just impossible, but fundamentally insane: the Nexus Gap jump." The camera zoomed in on a small figure floating at the edge of normal space. Do-Yun Kim, wearing what appeared to be a woefully inadequate protective suit by galactic standards, was performing what she called her warm-up stretches. The sight of a human casually flexing in the face of cosmic horror caused several alien viewers to emit distress pheromones. "For our viewers just joining us," the announcer continued, "the Nexus Gap is a region of space where our universe's physics break down completely. In the last millennium, 23 different species have attempted to navigate it. None have survived. The Gap has claimed over 300 void jumpers, 2 research vessels, and 1 particularly unlucky pizza delivery drone." Do-Yun adjusted her jetpack, its sleek design a stark contrast to the bulky safety equipment typically used in void jumping. A swarm of safety drones buzzed around her, their warning signals flashing frantically. She casually swatted them away like annoying flies. "Miss Kim," the announcer's voice cracked, "our sensors indicate that the Gap's quantum fluctuations are particularly violent today. Perhaps we should postpone." "Perfect conditions." Do-Yun interrupted cheerfully. She was checking her helmet's seals with the casual attention someone might give to tying their shoelaces. "The more chaos, the better the show, right?" The control room erupted in alarmed chatter. The safety commissioner, a being made of pure energy, was fluctuating between colors of extreme concern. "Human Kim, the Gap is showing signs of temporal displacement. Anything entering it might emerge centuries before or after entry, if it emerges at all. Time travel too. Awesome." Do-Yun's enthusiasm only seemed to grow. "That's definitely going in my highlight reel." She activated her suit's communication system one last time. "Just like jumping into the pool back home," she radioed, her voice carrying the same excitement as someone about to try a new flavor of ice cream. Then, before anyone could stop her, she fired her jetpack and launched herself straight toward the writhing void. The entire galaxy watched in collective horror as Do-Yun Kim entered the Nexus Gap. The sensors tracking her vital signs went wild, then calm, then started displaying readings in ancient Sumerian. But what happened next made history. Do-Yun didn't just survive. She turned the impossible into an art form. She twisted through geometries that shouldn't exist, her body moving with the grace of a dancer as she navigated waves of probability. Where other species saw mind-breaking chaos, she saw opportunities for what she called sick moves. "Left is purple, up is yesterday, and sideways tastes like jazz," she shouted excitedly over the radio, her voice somehow coming through clearly despite the laws of physics having a complete breakdown around her. "This is better than that zero-G skate park on Mars." The alien audience watched in fascination as Du Yun treated one of the most dangerous phenomena in known space like a playground. She performed spins through fourth-dimensional space, used temporal eddies as launching pads, and at one point appeared to high-five herself from 3 different timelines. The judges are, well, the judges have either fainted or evolved into higher beings of pure thought, the announcer reported weakly. But I think we can all agree this is unprecedented. After what seemed like both an eternity and a split second, Du Yun emerged from the other side of the gap. Her suit was covered in equations that proved several universal constants wrong, and she was trailing stardust that smelled like Tuesday. Gave up after reaching 2,743, mainly because their counting software crashed. But the implications for space travel are remarkable. Min Ki continued enthusiastically. We can now generate stable wormholes using the energy equivalent of a household appliance. Jin A has already modified our dishwasher to create temporary shortcuts to her parents' house across the galaxy. Makes family dinners much more convenient. The presentation concluded with Min Ki serving quantum-stabilized coffee to the stunned audience. Several species evolved new sensory organs just to process the experience. The patent application was a bit tricky, Min Ki added as an afterthought. The forms don't have boxes to check for kitchen appliance modifications that break the laws of physics. We had to write that in manually. In the following weeks, the Galactic Science Academy had to completely revise its research protocols. They created a new classification called Human Garage Science, which came with the warning: caution, breakthrough may occur while violating every known safety regulation. The Academy also installed coffee makers in all its quantum physics labs, though none quite matched the efficiency of Jin A's original model. As she pointed out, it's not just the machine, it's knowing exactly when to break the laws of physics and when to follow the recipe. The Min-Kiss discovery revolutionized space travel, even if their methods gave safety inspectors nightmares. Their garage became a historical site, though visitors were advised not to use the quantum-enhanced microwave unless they were comfortable with their lunch existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. As for Professor Min Ki and Jin A, they were already working on their next project, something involving their toaster and the fabric of reality. The Academy decided it was better not to ask for details until after they'd reinforced the universe's safety protocols. The emergency alert sirens wailed through the Galactic Council's Crisis Center as holographic displays showed the Crimson Nebula's accelerating collapse. 12 inhabited star systems, home to billions of beings, lay in the path of the approaching catastrophe. The Council's finest minds had calculated they had less than 48 hours before the first system would be consumed. Captain Yuna Lee of the Earth vessel Dauntless stood calmly in the center of chaos, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the swirling displays. The massive red clouds of the nebula twisted inward like a cosmic whirlpool, pulling everything toward its center with increasing force. The evacuation ships won't make it in time, one council member stated, their crystalline form vibrating with distress. We're looking at the complete loss of all 12 systems. Not if we stop it, Yuna said simply, causing every alien head in the room to turn toward her. The safety commissioner, a tall being composed of shifting geometric patterns, floated forward. Captain Lee, the forces involved in this collapse are beyond any intervention. The energy output alone would vaporize any ship that approaches. Yuna smiled, pulling up her own datapad. We've got a plan, she announced, while her science officer Taiwan's fingers flew across his console, calculating jump trajectories that the alien computers insisted were impossible. Look here, Taiwan pointed to his calculations. If we make 17 precisely timed jumps through the collapsing space-time, we can reach the nebula's core before total collapse. Then it's just a matter of reversing the gravimetric polarity. The council members stared at the human calculations in horror. These jumps, they pass through zones where space-time itself is being torn apart. The safety commissioner's patterns became jagged with alarm. This is madness. This is Tuesday. Yuna replied with a shrug. Last week we surfed a solar flare to rescue that mining colony. This is practically a vacation. Before the council could stop them, Yuna's crew was already boarding the Dauntless. The human ship was small compared to most galactic vessels, but it moved with an agility that seemed to defy physics. All hands, battle stations, Yuna announced as they approached the nebula's edge. Todd 1, plot our course. Engineering, give us everything you've got. Medical, prepare for interesting times. The Dauntless dove into the maelstrom of the collapsing nebula like a surfer catching a wave. Red energy swirled around them as Ta 1 called out jump coordinates. Jump 1. Now. The ship vanished and reappeared deeper in the chaos. Jump 2. Now. They twisted through a tear in spacetime that should have shredded them. The council watched through long-range sensors, their various biological and mechanical systems struggling to process what they were seeing. The human ship wasn't just surviving the impossible conditions, it was practically dancing through them. Captain, Ta 1 called out. That last jump knocked our artificial gravity offline. Also, the coffee maker in the mess hall is now brewing drinks from next Wednesday. Noted, Yuna replied, gripping her chair as the ship spun through another reality-defying maneuver. How's our approach vector? On target, though we're technically arriving 5 minutes before we left. I suggest we don't think too hard about that. As they approached the nebula's core, the forces grew stronger. Reality itself began to break down around them. The ship's hull groaned under pressures it was never designed to withstand. Final jump in 3, 2, 1. Ta 1's voice was steady as they made their last leap into the heart of the catastrophe. The core of the Crimson Nebula was a sight few beings had ever witnessed, a swirling maelstrom of pure chaos where the laws of physics went to die. The Dauntless hung there for a moment, suspended between destruction and salvation. Now, engineering. Yuna commanded. The ship's modified systems engaged, sending out a pulse that reached into the very fabric of spacetime. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly at first, but with gathering speed, the collapse began to reverse. The red clouds of the nebula started expanding outward, returning to their original positions. 12 star systems and billions of lives were saved. The Dauntless emerged from the stabilized nebula 6 hours later, its hull covered in mathematical equations that would keep quantum physicists busy for decades. The crew was tired but triumphant, though everyone agreed that the coffee from next Wednesday tasted strange. When they returned to the council chamber, the safety commissioner was still trying to process what had happened. You violated 73 laws of physics, ignored every safety protocol in existence, and performed maneuvers that our best computers still insist are impossible. Did we? Yuna asked innocently. I hadn't noticed. Too busy saving lives. She turned to her crew with a grin. Who's up for lunch? I hear the nebula surfing really brings out the flavor in kimchi. The incident was later added to the Galactic Council's emergency response protocols under a new category. When all hope is lost, call the humans. Though they also added a footnote. But don't watch too closely. It's better for everyone's sanity. The Galactic University's normally peaceful halls echoed with the sounds of panicked alien parents rushing toward the xenotherapy department. Their various appendages, tentacles, and energy fields trembled with concern as they passed windows showing their children engaged in what humans called normal recreational activities. Professor Jai-Yun Song sat calmly at her desk, surrounded by worried administrators from 17 different species. Her classroom walls were covered with posters showing humans doing what most species considered suicidal activities: mountain climbing, deep-sea diving, and eating extremely spicy foods. Professor Song, the dean, a being of pure light contained in an ornate hovering sphere, flickered anxiously. We've received over 3,000 complaints this week alone. Young Trixians are requesting surfboards. The crystalline students are experimenting with what they call extreme sports. Yesterday, a group of energy beings tried to make kimchi. Jai-Yun smiled. adjusting her glasses as she pulled up her lesson plans. I fail to see the problem. They're simply learning to properly assess and manage risks, a crucial life skill. But they're acting like humans. The dean's light pattern shifted to express maximum distress. Exactly, Jai-yun replied cheerfully. Today's lesson is particularly exciting. We're calculating acceptable risks versus perceived risks using practical examples. The administrators watched in horror through the classroom window as Jai-yun's students filed in. Young aliens of all shapes and sizes, many wearing Earth-style clothing or carrying human sports equipment, took their seats with unprecedented enthusiasm. Today, Jai-yun announced to her mixed-species class, "We're going to discuss the difference between actual danger and perceived danger. Can anyone give me an example?" A young crystalline being raised a faceted appendage. "Oh, like how my parents think human dancing will shatter my molecular structure, but it actually helps improve my crystal alignment." Excellent example. Jai-yun beamed. Now, who did their homework? Who tried something new that their species traditionally avoids? The class erupted with excited responses. A floating energy being proudly demonstrated how they had learned to eat solid food by converting it to plasma. A multi-dimensional student showed off their new hobby of 2D painting. Even the usually timid gaseous species had started experimenting with what they called extreme density fluctuations. Outside the classroom, more parents arrived, drawn by reports that their children were developing human-like tendencies. They watched in mounting anxiety as Jai-yun led her class through a practical demonstration of risk assessment. "Remember," she explained, setting up a small kitchen area, "many species consider earth peppers to be lethal bioweapons. But with proper preparation and understanding." She carefully cut a jalapeno, showing proper safety techniques. A brave crystalline student stepped forward to taste a tiny piece, their crystal structure glowing with excitement rather than fear. "It's hot, but in a good way. My heat dispersion patterns are actually improving." The xenotherapy department's crisis hotline was overwhelmed with calls. Parents reported their children engaging in unprecedented behaviors, requesting spicy food, showing interest in sports, and worst of all, developing what humans called a sense of adventure. Professor Song, an administrator, interrupted the class. "We have reports of students organizing something called a weekend extreme sports club." "Wonderful." Jai-yun clapped her hands. "They're showing initiative and building cross-species social bonds." The parents watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as their children demonstrated their new skills. Young aliens were teaching each other earth dances, sharing mildly spicy snacks, and discussing plans for supervised adventure activities. But what about safety? A concerned parent asked through the classroom's communication system. Jai-yun walked to the window, gesturing at her students. "Look at them. They're not being reckless. They're learning to understand and manage risks. They're discovering that the universe isn't as dangerous as they've been taught. They're growing." As if to prove her point, a group of students demonstrated their latest project, a carefully calculated and thoroughly safety-checked bungee jumping system designed to work for 17 different species simultaneously. "We did all the math," a young energy being exclaimed proudly. "We even accounted for quantum fluctuations and interdimensional safety margins." The university administration eventually had to create an entire new department, Human-Inspired Safe Adventure Studies. They also installed Earth-style sports facilities, though they drew the line at allowing actual skydiving on campus. Jai-yun's teaching methods, while controversial, produced remarkable results. Her students showed improved problem-solving abilities, better stress management, and unprecedented levels of cross-species cooperation. They were becoming more confident, more capable, and yes, a bit more human. As she watched her students excitedly planning their next adventure, a carefully supervised hot sauce tasting competition, Jai-yun smiled. The galaxy was changing, one brave young alien at a time. "Remember," she told her class as they prepared to leave, "life isn't about avoiding all risks. It's about understanding them, preparing for them, and sometimes taking that exciting leap forward. The parents outside the classroom couldn't help but notice their children seemed happier, more confident, and more capable than ever before. Though they still struggled with the concept of fun exercise, they had to admit that perhaps these human ideas weren't entirely crazy after all. Even if they did have to install special ventilation systems to handle all the spicy food experiments. A decade had passed since humans first stumbled onto the galactic stage by casually drinking what most species considered fatal poison. The Galactic Council chamber looked quite different now. The safety barriers were fewer, the warning signs were smaller, and most notably, there was a distinct sense of excited anticipation rather than dread when humans approached the podium. Senior diplomat Hyunwoo stood before the assembled representatives, his traditional diplomatic robes modified with what he called practical improvements, including pockets that technically existed in several dimensions at once. The chamber's data screens displayed an impressive array of statistics. Human-led innovations had increased galactic technological progress by 300%, despite causing a 1,000% increase in safety regulation violations. Distinguished members of the council, Hyunwoo began, pulling out an actual glass of Earth-made soju, causing several safety officers to reach for their emergency protocols out of habit. 10 years ago, we humans arrived here by accidentally proving our immunity to your deadliest diplomatic security measures. Since then, we've broken approximately 47,892 safety regulations, invented 273 new categories of impossible activities, and somehow managed to make the galaxy both more dangerous and safer at the same time. The council members murmured in agreement. They had learned to recognize the signs of an impending human innovation. It usually started with someone saying, "I wonder what would happen if," and ended with the laws of physics filing a formal complaint. Our methods may seem reckless. Hyunwoo continued, gesturing to a holographic display of human achievements. It showed highlights like the quantum coffee maker that revolutionized space travel, the void-jumping sports league that defied several laws of reality, and the now famous incident where a human child science project accidentally proved string theory. But there's a method to our madness. Therefore, we propose a new classification system for galactic activities. Not everything unusual is dangerous, and not everything dangerous is impossible. Sometimes, you just need to hold someone's beverage and watch what happens. The council chamber's artificial intelligence noted a 50% increase in stress indicators among the senior members, but also a 200% increase in interest leaning forward among the younger diplomats. Look at what we've accomplished together. Hyunwoo gestured to the gathered species. The crystalline beings now enjoy extreme sports. The energy collectives have discovered the joy of spicy food. Even the quantum harmonics have started a rock band. Though we're still working on explaining why the music doesn't have to exist in all possible dimensions simultaneously. He raised his glass, and to the older council members' shock, several young alien diplomats raised their own drinks in response, some even containing actual Earth beverages. To the future, Hyunwoo said, placing his drink deliberately on the podium. Now, watch this. He proceeded to demonstrate humanity's latest innovation, a method of using controlled chaos theory to improve faster-than-light travel. The mathematics involved made several theoretical physicists evolve into higher beings of pure thought, but the results were undeniable. The council chambers erupted in a mixture of horrified gasps and excited cheers as Hyunwoo's demonstration bent several laws of physics into interesting new shapes. The younger council members were already discussing applications, while the older ones were trying to figure out how to write safety regulations for something that technically existed outside of normal spacetime. In the end, the council made a historic decision. The phrase, "hold my drink," was officially entered into the Galactic Legal Code as the formal declaration of a human-led innovation attempt. It came with a standard set of warnings, waivers, and the understanding that whatever followed would probably violate at least 3 laws of physics. As Hyunwoo left the chamber that day, he passed a group of young aliens practicing the time-honored human tradition of saying, "What's the worst that could happen?" before attempting something impressive. The galaxy had changed, and humanity's unique approach to the impossible had become the new normal. The Council's official records for that day ended with a note that would have been unthinkable 10 years earlier. When a human says, "Hold my drink," do not waste time explaining why something is impossible. Just grab the drink, start recording, and prepare to update the physics textbooks. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the best safety protocol was simply to get out of the way and let humans do what they do best: the impossible, the improbable, and the incredibly entertaining. After all, as humans kept proving, the universe's boundaries were more like guidelines anyway.